I come from Hyderabad and people must be wondering what is the connect. I grew up in Chandigarh and I did my MBBS MD from Government Medical College Patiala. So that's how I know Dr. Vitul, and he was kind enough to invite me for this session. So I am a practicing pulmonologist working at Super Specialty Hospital. I work with the care group of hospitals in Hyderabad. So today's topic is on pneumonia. So pneumonia, as the definition goes, is a clinical radiological picture where the patient presents with fever, cough, and the radiology fits into the definition of consolidation, which is a typical airspace heterogeneous infiltration with the air bronchogram. So the pathognomic feature here is an air bronchogram, which you see on an X-ray chest and more clearly on a CT scan of the chest. So pneumonia has been classified in different ways. So morbid anatomist would classify it based on the distribution, whether it's lobar, segmental, subsegmental, or a bronchopneumonia. Empirists would say according to the cause and the duration of presentation. So is it early presentation within the first 5 to 7 days, community-acquired pneumonia? Later than that, if the patient has a background of being in a hospital and shifted from another hospital to the higher center, it would be a hospital-acquired pneumonia. If it is, the patient is on a ventilator, then it will be a ventilator-associated pneumonia. Aspiration pneumonia, especially seen in the neurological patients. And if it's an immunocompromised host, it would be the organisms we look for is different. And there is the workup would be the same, but the organisms you especially look for would be difficult. If it's say an HIV patient or a renal transplant patient, and what is the time that the patient presents with pneumonia. So behaviorist pneumonia is easy to treat pneumonia or a difficult to treat pneumonia. So if the patient is clinically improving with the first set of antibiotics which you are giving, then we would say it's an easy to treat pneumonia. Difficult if the patient keeps on deteriorating clinically, it becomes a difficult to treat pneumonia. So expected resolution of pneumonia, there is actually no set time frame. The rate of resolution is not easily defined, and it may vary depending upon the underlying cause and the underlying disease structure, the structure of the lung. And subjective improvement is seen within 3 to 4 days of treatment. So what is subjective improvement? Subjective improvement will be resolution of symptoms. And if you develop a good clinical sense, the toxemia reduces. The patient to look at only becomes better. The fever comes down, the cough comes down, and breathlessness is usually a presentation of complications. So usual duration of findings in treating community-acquired pneumonia, everybody must be, the students especially here would be aware of the parameters we use, the prognostic parameters we use, like CURB 65 and the PSI, the pneumonia severity index, or the CURB 65. So CURB 65 is confusion, uremia, respiratory rate, and the blood pressure, and age more than 65. So if these factors are there, we are very, very careful in prognosticating the patient. So, and when we look at the clinical improvement of the patient, it is also the same parameters we are looking at. So tachycardia and hypotension usually improve in 2 days. Fever, there is actually no set pattern, but this is only a clinical indicator of whether the patient is improving or not improving. Fever, tachypnea and hypoxia improves in 3 days. Cough usually takes a long time to go. We must have seen even in the COVID patients. Now we have a lot of post-COVID people who are coming back, and the usual presenting symptom is cough. So even though we do a spirometry there and we do look at the lung function, but usually any lung injury will generally have a reactive airways. So cough is usually the last thing to go. Fatigue, definitely yes, if it is a definite toxemia. Infiltrates on the chest radiograph are the last things to go. So one point to really remember here is that the clinical deterioration and the clinical improvement comes earlier than the radiological deterioration or the radiological improvement. So what if the patient is improving clinically but the infiltrate is persisting, I would still wait for a while before I subject the patient to more detailed tests and more sophisticated tests. So usually we wait for 4 weeks. So non-resolving pneumonia, coming to the subject on hand, it is a radiographic infiltrate that has not resolved in an expected period of time. So I watch a patient closely, and if the patient is hypoxic, stays in the hospital, and then during my regular rounds, I see whether the patient is improving or not. And if it is not improving based on the presumptive diagnosis after 10 days of antibiotic therapy, but if clinically the patient is better, I would still wait for 4 weeks and then think of doing a more detailed workup. So slowly resolving pneumonia defined as less than 50% clearing at 4 weeks and associated with clinical improvement on antibiotics. So after 4 weeks is when my alarm bell will ring. So non-resolving pneumonia is defined by the presence or the persistence of clinical symptoms and signs. That is, so what are the symptoms of pneumonia that we usually see? It is cough, sputum production, with or without fever. Fever may be there, normally if we see obstructive pneumonias, we see that the original symptoms go away, but that shadow won't go away. So if it is persistent, I would really go and think of whether to do a CT scan. These days actually all the patients walk in with a CT scan. Doing a second opinion on patients or a third opinion on patients, they usually walk in with a CT scan. Even during the COVID season, CT scans are not recommended for all the patients. But everybody would do a CT scan and come in with the CT scan. So I think CT is now, we are doing low dose CT scan, so it is quite okay to do a CT scan. So failure of resolution of radiographic features by 50% in 2 weeks, completely in 4 weeks on serial chest x-rays, in spite of antibiotic therapy for a minimum of 10 days. So that is how we would be defining non-resolving pneumonia. So need for further evaluation. 15% of pulmonary consultations which are needing hospitalization is non-resolving pneumonia. The moment a physician, I'm sorry, I'm speaking at the physicians conference, but the physician would recognize the need for a deeper assessment and then call in the pulmonologist. That's how I get my referrals. So if they are suspecting something else, they would call me to look more deeply into it. 8% of bronchoscopies. So I can, during my journey as a pulmonologist, we have done a lot of bronchoscopies for non-resolving pneumonias, and what we got was a varied reasons we have seen. So one interesting thing was achalasia cardia. So there was a repeated pneumonia we were seeing, and nobody looked at the diameter of the esophagus, and it was quite clear on this X-ray itself. And the patient used to aspirate and get a pneumonia in the lower lobe time and again. So all it needed was a barium swallow, and we had the diagnosis and subsequently treated for that. So 8% of the bronchoscopies which we see is because of either non-diagnostic sputum assessment, and then we need a deeper look into it. So then we go ahead and do a bronchoscopy. So 8% of bronchoscopies, the indication usually is a non-resolving pneumonia. 10% of community-acquired pneumonias which do not respond to the traditional antibiotic therapy would be needed to be further evaluated, and 60% of hospital-acquired pneumonias. So why do we need, why the 60% figure? Because usually what happens is the bacteria are very, very clever, so they keep on mutating, they keep on changing. The antibiotic susceptibility also keeps on changing. So we need a protected bowel sample to submit to culture, and that's why patients on ventilators, we get a lot of referrals to do a bronchoscopic alveolar lavage. So what factors affect the rate of resolution? Any elderly age above 50 years, severity of the disease. So the more severe the disease, the longer it takes for it to resolve. And atypical organisms like Mycoplasma, Chlamydia and Moraxella. So we have to add an antibiotic to cover these if we are considering community-acquired pneumonia. Normally our protocol is to choose your antibiotic and also give an atypical coverage. Mycoplasma, we have to do a urinary antigen which is not available at all the centers. And chlamydia, we really can't culture. So if it is an atypical organism as manifested by a pneumonia plus the extrapulmonary manifestations of atypical pneumonia, we have to consider antibiotic addition for the atypical agents, and the drug of choice for this is a newer macrolide. So causes of non-resolving pneumonia is also inappropriate treatment. So it could be just like what we talk in tuberculosis, it could be a wrong antibiotic choice, it could be a wrong duration of treatment, it could be the wrong dosage. So all these things are important. And superinfection, the longer the patient stays in the hospital, so sitting duck for superinfection and complications of initial pneumonia. So please do keep a watch out for that, for either a deterioration in the form of cavitation or an empyema. So you will not have a patient who has improved with this. And host factors, many a time we miss immunosuppression. HIV is one thing that people will not, they will not come and tell you that they have RBD, and usually it is a suspicion, you go ahead and do. Earlier we had a protocol, we used to do HIV testing for all admissions, but now we have to have an informed consent and do it. So delayed radiological recovery, sometimes the organism, presence of resistant organisms, presence of unusual organisms, history of travel is very important here. Defects in the defense, like you have immunosuppression, and there are other diseases which mimic pneumonia. I'll be just presenting a couple of cases on that. So inappropriate microbial therapy includes inadequate dosing, agents that fail to penetrate infected lung tissue, often aminoglycosides. So this, it's very important to understand, especially for meningitis and other things. We always talk of, does the drug cause the blood-brain barrier? So please be very, very careful when you choose an agent. You should know your pharmacotherapy well. Use of agents to which organisms are or have become resistant. So this is very common in the ICUs. Superinfections with resistant organisms like fungi, mycobacterium, tuberculosis. In the post-COVID era, we are seeing a lot of pneumonias which are not responding, and this will be usually a fungus. Everybody is now talking of black, white, yellow fungus. So we had seen a few cases like that. So please keep that in mind. And viral co-infections are very common. So everybody walked in with in the COVID era with a CT scan, and then you are supposed to say, is it COVID or is it tuberculosis or is it masses? Very interestingly, because of these screening CTs, I came across 2 patients last week where incidental masses were picked up, early cancers were picked up, and the patients are doing well post-lobectomy. So maybe it was a blessing in disguise. So host factors associated with delayed resolution of pneumonia is alcoholism, older age group, diabetes, chronic structural lung disease underlying, which will cause a delayed resolution of the pneumonia. And HIV, COPD again, COPD, what is most important is the spirometric value of the forced expiratory volume. The first second is very important. If the patient has an FEV1 of less than 50% of the predicted value, he will be more prone for more severe infections, especially the Pseudomonas, and it will be a delayed resolution. Multilobar pneumonia takes longer, and intubated patients for super infection. So comorbidities, I'll just read out a couple of things. Why does COPD have delayed resolution? Because we all know in COPD there will be an impaired mucociliary clearance of the secretions. So the longer the secretions stagnate, the more difficult it is for the pneumonia to clear off. And alcohol use, malnutrition, impaired neutrophil function, heart failure, edema fluid, impaired lymphatic drainage. Chronic kidney disease again is an immunosuppressed state. Malignancy again, effects of chemotherapy. So all these multifactorial reasons would cause a delayed resolution of the pneumonia. So delayed radiological recovery, non-resolving pneumonia encompasses failure of clinical or radiological recovery. Many will have clinical improvement, but radiological recovery lags. So almost a 48-hour lag would be there. So this is, I've just kept in a tabular form. If the organizers give you the slides, you can go in detail in that. So let's come to the actual topic. It is non-infectious causes. It could be an underlying carcinoma, it could be an endobronchial obstruction by a tumor, or it could be a lipidic adenocarcinoma which spreads along the alveolar walls, and a lymphoma of the lung. Believe me, I've seen all. So a foreign body, pulmonary alveolar proteinosis. We were not talking a lot of PAP, but these days we have seen a lot of cases and had good results with serial bronchoalveolar lavages. So it is very characteristic. I have a CT to show you how it looks like. Churg-Strauss, that is all the vasculitis, sarcoidosis, alveolar sarcoidosis is known. We have actually presented a case also. And acute and chronic eosinophilic pneumonias also present as pneumonias which do not respond to your usual antibiotics. The drug of choice for eosinophilic pneumonia is systemic steroids. So a clinical case of a 78-year-old female, low-grade fever, cough, dyspnea, weakness, non-resolution 2 weeks after being treated with Moxi, and clinically she was tachycardic, tachypneic, and SATs on room air were 88. So this was the X-ray of, but when we look at the CT, so you see there is an alveolar patch, and then slowly it has increased. A to D, it's the lung window. So if you look at this, this is the alveolar shadow right lung, and then slowly it has deteriorated. These are the later X-rays with the effusion, and it has deteriorated. So after 12 days of antibiotics showing further deterioration, so there was a transthoracic. If you go look at the CT here, this is abutting, it is quite near the chest wall, so amenable to a transthoracic lung biopsy, and it showed a lymphoma of the lung. So that was a primary lymphoma of the lung. So once you have a biopsy and you have a clear-cut causative agent, you know how to, the treatment absolutely changes. So a 56-year-old man, non-smoker, there was a persistent right lower lobe pneumonia after antibiotic. A CCT chest showed 8 centimeter cystic lesion with air fluid level, and PET CT showed a SUV max of 3.2, and biopsy revealed a mucinous adenocarcinoma. This was a case we did, 66-year-old female. So the usual history would be the same, cough, fever, maybe breathlessness. So for 2 weeks, maintaining SATs, but a higher pulse rate. So vital signs are always vital. So always look at the sign. Any one parameter not fitting into it, please have your antenna up and try to investigate and think more. So in the era of COVID, RT-PCR was negative, and microbiology after BAL revealed negative AFB, grams, and fungal stains, but the bronchoscopy showed a foreign body obstruction. So this is what the CT looked like. So this is the consolidation we see in the right lower lobe, and during bronchoscopy, I come from the land of upmas and dosas. So this was a chana dal in the upma, which the old lady had aspirated, and we could remove it successfully. So immunological disorders like vasculitis, very commonly seen Early in my career, I had a very young girl of about 25 years and cavitating lesions, treated for tuberculosis about 2 years prior to coming to me. And then I kept on seeing I had newer and newer cavities in different, both the lungs. So worked her up and it turned out to be Wegener's. So very commonly seen, limited Wegener's is seen in the lungs. And diffuse alveolar hemorrhage, you'll have a setting for it. So, and it is, you can diagnose it with just by putting in a bronchoscope, you'll see a lot of blood coming out. Or you'll have an elderly patient on warfarin or on any other, so the newer oral anticoagulants will not give this kind of a picture. We don't even monitor the PT-INR. But a patient on warfarin and you can, if the patient comes with history of hemoptysis, please keep it in mind. Any patient, complicated patient, you please do a reconciliation of the drug treatment which the patient is undergoing. And usually you will have a clue there. Any IPF, ILD, please go and check all the drugs the patient is taking. We get a lot of cases with methotrexate and amiodarone who will come with breathlessness, and when you look at the CT, it is ILD. So the only intervention needed is withdrawing of the drug. So acute interstitial pneumonias, pulmonary alveolar proteinosis, commonly seen these days, maybe we are more aware. Sarcoid, somebody has put up a poster on sarcoid. That is a generalized sarcoid he has seen, but you can have only the alveolar shadows also. So keep all the possibilities in mind. So heart failure and pulmonary embolism. Pulmonary embolism, I had a patient who came only with consolidation and being treated outside for community-acquired pneumonia for almost 2 to 3 weeks. So the clues are in the general physical examination. There'll be hypoxia. And remember, pulmonary thromboembolism, the radiological features can be just a normal X-ray, or it could be a little bit of pulmonary pleural effusion. It could be a consolidation and all the other advanced signs like Hampton's hump, and you have that, all the other described things. But if the patient is coming with just a normal X-ray and the patient has unexplained hypoxemia, please do keep this in mind, and you have to ask for a CTPA, that is CT pulmonary angiography. So systemic vasculitis again may present as a shadow on the chest X-ray, and bronchoscopy and BAL is diagnostic. You just put in and you'll get blood in alveolar hemorrhage syndromes. And cryptogenic organizing pneumonia, again chest radiographic simulation to pneumonia. Treatment is with steroids again. So another very, very common thing is you should know your CT well, the halo sign, the reverse halo signs, and even COVID has given very, very typical CT signs. So you have to suspect fungal infections here and have to go and investigate for that. So chronic eosinophilic, a long history with pneumonia, and you'll also have reticulations with this. We normally, and the presentation would be very subacute. So the radiographic infiltrates would appear over weeks to months. Earlier we used to do surgical lung biopsies for this, but now we have better modalities like doing a cryobiopsy, and you get a good, nice chunk of material for biopsy. And the whole pathology, I'm sure you all must be well aware, it causes diffuse infiltration into the alveolar space and also thickening of the interstitial membrane. So the diagnosis, the thinking is important because the treatment is different. So then you will have to give corticosteroids. So this is chronic eosinophilic pneumonia, which is classically described as a negative picture of pulmonary edema. So pulmonary edema will have bilateral hilar shadows, interstitial shadows, whereas chronic eosinophilic will have that is a typical bat wing, and here you will have infiltrates in the peripheries. Acute will be again a very acute presentation, and sometimes they present with severe hypoxemia, which goes on to a ventilator, and here treatment is again steroids, and those could be life-saving. Acute interstitial pneumonia, I have seen only one patient of this, which is a very acute presentation of IPF, and the patient gallops, and you lose the patient in about, prognosis is very bad, 10 to 15 days you lose the patient. And typically ground glass attenuation, so you have to think of all the possibilities, do a BAL, and you have to follow up your microbiology very clearly, and that is how you have to keep your mind open in these cases. So this is typically, this is again pneumonia bilateral, which came out to be acute myelogenous leukemia, and the diagnosis of DAD was made because severe thrombocytopenia was there, so he bled into his lungs. So pulmonary alveolar proteinosis, I'm sure everybody knows this is what it looks like. Crazy paving pattern it is called. And during COVID also, in the later part of COVID, early COVID, we were seeing peripheral, fluffy reticular shadows. But then the patient comes back. I recently discharged a patient who earlier came with COVID positivity, and CT was not at all bad. CT spheretic of about 5/25. But in the second week, he turned hypoxic, and the family was very anxious, and they panicked. They brought him back. We repeated a CT. We had a crazy paving, but there the pattern is more on the peripheral areas. So just supportive treatment with oxygen, the patient went home. So crazy paving, please do think of pulmonary alveolar proteinosis. These patients can be saved by serial lavage of the lung, and we have to keep this option in mind. So this is alveolar sarcoidosis with alveolar shadows, so that you will get non-caseating granulomas on a transthoracic biopsy. Another point I want to mention here is when you put in a scope, you will see nodularity right from the nasopharynx, and you can just do a bronchial biopsy even at the carina. The sensitivity rate is almost ranges from 96 to 98% on a transbronchial lung biopsy for sarcoidosis. So drug-induced lung disease, a very important part. Just like I said, please do the medical reconciliation, nitrofurantoin, amiodarone, methotrexate. I work in a very, very active oncology unit in our hospital. So I work with them. So bleomycin is very commonly given, and please keep your mind open for lung fibrosis secondary to bleomycin. All right then, thank you very much.